This conference will now be recorded.
This is SUB01's 2019 Facility Plan with the State Construction Department. We'll introduce ourselves first.
Good afternoon, Brandon Finney with the State Construction Department. My role with the team is to identify through the facility planning process any capital construction needs, and then we as a team present them to the legislative bodies.
Hey guys, I'm Raj Gandhi. I'm the accounting analyst and AIM assistant here. I basically provide these guys with information from the AIM database.
Amber Leach, policy planning coordinator, and my role is during this process working with the district on the documentation for state facility plan meetings.
Troy Decker, planning. My role is make sure we abide by all state statutes, rules, and regs in the facility planning process. Make sure we have a process in which to update our database so that we can get accurate reports to the commission and the select committee and joint appropriations committee. And also I'm part of the budget team that helps develop budgets for requests to the commission.
I'm Lance Johnson, project manager for school facilities. I work directly with the districts.
Jay Harnack, Superintendent, Sublette County School District Number 1.
I'm Vern McAdams. I'm the Director of Business and Operations for Sublette County School District Number 1.
Greg Anderson, I'm the Maintenance Director for the Sublette County School District Number 1.
And I'm Gerald Flukiger. I'm the middle school principal right now at Sublette 1.
All right. Well, welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. Like I said, Paul Severson, I'll go ahead and eliminate him if he doesn't show up here in just a little bit. So with that, we're going to roll forward. I'm going to go ahead and turn off our camera so we don't have any streaming issues. Just want to let you see our smiling faces this afternoon before we got started. So the facility planning process over the last decade has really been improved dramatically. These are very visual facility plans. Periodically, not often, but periodically, we do have the governor's office ask for facility plans, look for at a specific district, or we have some individual legislators every once in a while. So these are designed in such a way that someone can go ahead and look at it within about 10 minutes, have a pretty good idea of the issues of the district, the condition of the buildings, and so on and so forth, and have some clear communication. So that's part of the process. The other part of the process is the simple fact that we have turnover in districts. And so when there is turnover, it's nice to have continuity of information and communication. And these really help new personnel within districts know what's been talked about in the past and kind of bring them up to an understanding of where the district is, present tense, and facilities. So with that, a lot on the front end of this is more housekeeping than anything else, and that's why Amber works so hard with you. So we'll kind of truck on through this at a fairly good pace, and then if we need to slow down at certain places, which we do, we will. And then district or staff, if you have any questions, comments, or needs, as I go on through this, please just speak up, and we'll address those as we go. One of the improvements we've made is just some visuals, like these Google Earth captured off Google Earth, so that's good on your sites. And so the district has reviewed acreages and you verify accuracy. This is important because WDE uses these acreages and it does impact your groundskeeper allowances. So the block grant's important to you, it's important to us. That's why this is just a nod of the head. It's a process by which it's very important to follow through. What's that?
I was wanting to see where their undeveloped was.
Yeah, he was just looking. Brandon was looking at your undeveloped at 41.16 acres and the 10 acres.
That's a nice chunk of land to hold. That's good.
Did you want to look at?
I was wondering if it's usable or junk land or good land.
Yeah, where that 41 acres, guys? Where's that?
Go west of town, right to Duck Creek. Yep. And that's a restricted deed. We cannot build on it or anything with that deed.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's all swampy meadows.
Gotcha.
It was given to the district years ago. And done anything with it. There's not a whole lot we can do with it.
Okay.
Gotcha.
Answer your question.
Yeah. How about the 10 acres?
It's south of town in the Redstone edition. We've owned that for a long time. It's meadowland right now is what it is, but there are housing developments around it. And, we actually looked at putting the elementary school out there before we build it. There's no real infrastructure right there. So that's kind of why we decided to go out in a whole new subdivision.
Thank you.
Okay, no land leases, land disposition, or land acquisition needs at this point. So this is the first talking point. You guys were talking about the cemetery and maybe the cemetery taking over a little bit of 1.8 acres on the east side of the middle school tract, and then also the town of Pinedale with regard interested in the old elementary school site. So I kind of brought these. I think I have the right ones, school district, and please tell me otherwise. Are we looking at the correct area here? This is the cemetery, correct?
We do, and that I've got it right. It's that north notch where it kind of goes to the east there. They want to cut that triangle piece out.
Right up here. You're right on it.
So you just move your
corner.
cursor down a little bit, and it'll be that triangle.
Right there.
Yeah, they basically want to take that whole triangle section, and it's above the lead ditch. It's on a hillside. And there's not a whole lot of value to us as a piece of property.
Okay.
It's a very steep hillside that they're going to develop a little bit so they can move that one building up in that corner there and expand their operations for groundskeeping and.
Oh, okay.
You can see they got their service building for the cemetery right there, not too far above it.
Right
I've been
there.
pushing extra spill dirt down the hill, starting to come towards our property.
Let's do this week, 15 minutes. Kenny should be back from lunch, check with her, and then if we don't see anybody, let's do that. Thanks, sir. That's a good call. Thank you.
Okay, and then the old elementary school playground, is this correct, looking at this?
That's correct. That was the playground from the original elementary school down on South Fremont. It's just a little over an acre, of course, and
What is this red roof building?
It's a little building there. It's actually restrooms and a little building for maintenance there.
Okay. Guess we could kind of see.
We actually leave it locked up and don't use it most of the year.
Thinking I had that right here. I don't know if I lost it or what. I thought it was down south just a little way here.
It is.
A little bit.
Just a block south of Pine.
For some reason I'm not seeing it now, and I don't know why.
Well, you need to go south.
Go south.
South farther? Oh, right there.
Whoa. Right there it is.
Okay.
That's the church.
That's a church roof.
Okay.
Right
There
there.
you are.
That's it.
That's our restrooms, and basically our sprinkler system is mounted in there too.
Okay.
I think there's some hardware for the cameras that are down there as well.
And lighting system.
And lighting system.
Okay.
All the way to their
Right to
sidewalk.
the edge of the sidewalk on
Yeah,
this.
'cause the original survey is bad
What's-
down there, 7 feet.
City. All right, so those are two things you said in your notes that it's not solidified yet, just kind of thinking it over, and it's preliminary part of talking it over. So that sounds good. So what I did want to point out is just state statute, and you guys are probably aware of this, but there's two state statutes that apply to this. If there's a building on a piece of property, this 2115-123F Roman numeral 6 that applies, and the only difference between this and this portion here, which is for land only, that I could see, the main portion is that disposition shall include options for use, lease, sell, and other means of disposing of the surplus building or facility or whatever. So there's just to make you aware, it's in the facility plan. And you should be, in the past, it was the district was able to just move forward and not have any commission approval at all. But now the commission is required to review them. We recommend on the front end of disposition. So if you solidify that, just bring it to the commission, explain what you're doing and why you're doing it, and just have them make a motion. That way you have no issues whatsoever with regard to if you do sell it and have funds. You know that those funds are completely yours to do with as you wish. But it's good to go through this process and make sure that you have the commission understand and make a motion prior to disposal of land. Not required, but certainly highly recommended with regard on the front.
Now that makes a lot of sense because that's actually our oldest piece of property.
Okay. So yeah, we get it. No problem there. Just a formality probably, but just want to make sure we communicate well. All right, property profiles. Let's see if we can do that. There is. That's right. All right, we can hear someone typing or something.
I just sent Lance a message.
Oh,
Is that you, Lance?
Is that Lance? Are you being productive over there?
No, I've got mine on mute.
Okay. Property profiles. The district has reviewed property profiles. These are buildings and verify accuracy. The square footage does impact the major maintenance payment with allowable square footage, and also WDE operations and maintenance payments. So thanks for checking this also, guys, because obviously we get information from WDE, ADM, and enrollment each year, and this is the authoritative database and data by which is Raj is actually working on that present tense and sent it over probably before, if not before Monday, to WDE, but they do use this for your block grant payments as well. You've reviewed the leases and verify accuracy. If you have approved leases such as BOCES, that can affect your square footage, and that square footage can generate major maintenance if ADM drives it high enough. You've reviewed your enhancements. This is something that is reported to the select committee each year, so we appreciate you walking through that, make sure it's accurate. I just said that the AIM database is updated. District appropriations, you don't have any, so there's nothing to report there. Otherwise, we'd be required to review it. And land security, if you take us away on that.
Okay. Well, Vern, you're familiar with our processes with the security funding that we have in place, with requesting to transfer funds from one to another. You're aware that that's a possibility and can be done, and you also understand too that and acknowledge that there's no back funding for these projects once you move from one to another, and that was in the past. But we have now new $4.9 million security funds that went through this legislation that the SFC and the SFD are discussing how to use those funds, whether you can use the full 20 of the security elements or what's going on with those to make it easier to spend and to give you more of a variety of the security items you can spend it on. And you also are aware of your 10% security that was available and 10% of your major maintenance that can be used for security purposes from the 17-18 biennium and the 19-20 funding year. And also you've got another 10% this year, the availability to spend another 10% of your major maintenance for this year in this biennium or this budget session. So with that being said, they were talking that there may not be other 10% security monies available in the future. So what we have to do is just make sure we watch your balance of your 10% security funding before we approve those projects. Make sure we don't go in the hole with that, because if we have a deficit, then we have to try and figure out how we're going to make that whole again. Also, there is availability of grant money out there for security projects through the Homeland Security and also Department of Justice that you could go into and try and find some of those grants. We also, the SFD has also been putting on some security seminars over the last few years, and I'm not sure. Yeah, I did. I met you and Greg in Casper one time, didn't we? You guys were at that one. And anyway, that's good that you're going to those. Make us aware of what's out there and give us some other options and ideas and also situations that people have had. And this year, since Paul's not there, he's kind of working with the Department of Ed on another security conference in, I believe, September, to just kind of piggyback on WDE meetings on security to try and get more input from the district, see what districts are doing out there, and keep it kind of homegrown and see what we're doing within the state and try and get good ideas from that as well. So, any questions on the security there, Vern? Or Jay or Greg, Gerald?
No, Lance, I think we're good. Gerald's making a note about his calendar in September, and I think you see from our notes, we got plans to spend some of that money here this summer coming up too, so.
Right.
Nope, appreciate the synopsis.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Lance.
19th, right? That's what
Okay, so capacity now. Your school district basically is you don't have any real capacity needs according to the methodology. But down below you did make some comments, and I'll comment on that just a second as well. But anyway, according to methodology, we're looking good for capacity with regard to just the calculation itself. As for enrollment projections, obviously, I won't take for granted how these work. I'll just describe it to you guys. But we do track kindergarten through 12th grade enrollment. We go 10 years in trailing data. And then what we do is project out 10 years in the future. Obviously, the farther away you get from today, the more hypothetical those projections become. And they're based on, of course, 10 years of past trailing data. So how these work is like your 2008 kindergarten advances to 2009 first grade, 2009 kindergarten, 2010 first grade. And we take an average of 10 years of trailing data between kindergarten and first grade. And you guys have a survival rate, a statistical survival rate of 100%. And then you guys are looking extremely good, actually, and until the senior year there. But you guys basically don't lose students on average, or pick up students between kindergarten and I think that's 7th grade. And then in 8th grade, you guys, it looks like you guys are losing about 4% of your students between that 7th and 8th grade year. You pick up 7%. This here, most likely right here, is probably because your rural students are coming in. Well, it shouldn't be though. Yeah, your rural schools, that's right, are rural school. There's a little bit of pickup there, but I'm not quite sure why you would have 107% at the freshman year. Are you guys getting students out of Big Piney, or what do you guys think how you're getting that gain?
I don't know that we know, to be honest with you.
Interesting. Okay. At any rate, you're looking real good, and then until your senior year, and you guys are aware of retention of students and lack thereof, and that looks like it's a challenging year, but for you guys. But at any rate, that's what this is. It just actually just statistically keeps track of survival rates. As kindergarten, you guys had a bumper crop in 2018, it looks like. It's probably related to birth rate. But on average, your kindergarten is looking at 86, and some years you're a little below, some years you're higher, which is understandable. You guys, you know, as you look down through the years, you have a very slow gain. It looks like you guys kind of leveled off pretty good for a couple of years, but it looks like this year you guys picked up quite a bit. Is there more activity going on in the gas fields or oil fields, or what do you guys think about that gain this year?
It doesn't feel like, we have some board members who work in the gas field. It doesn't feel like that, actually. I mean, it just sort of feels like it might be a little overflow from Jackson or Star Valley or places like that. It's slow growth, but I think it's people that have been through or come from other states just looking for lifestyle.
Interesting.
Beautiful country.
Yeah, it is. Okay. Well, that's all the observations we have. We know that, you know, you guys, again, are just a very, very slow growth, and it looks like you can handle that from a capacity point of view, from the commission policy.
It's growing.
Yeah. On a statewide, and again, I think you guys had some comments down here. We'll talk about in just a moment on that. The statewide list is here. You guys aren't in the top list there, but what happened is kind of interesting. Last year, we only had like 1 or 2 schools in the high capacity. These are high capacities, 100% and above, and that's according to commission rule and reg. Medium is 95 to 100, and then low capacity is 90-95. But we have a bunch more up here in the high capacity, and what the commission did was they changed their kindergarten through 3rd grade to a restricted capacity up to 25 students in a classroom. Got a bunch of pushback from school districts, reversed that, and went back to a restricted capacity of 16. State statute doesn't require 1-to-1 correlation of funding models through WDE, but they're allowed to do what they want as a commission. And so that pushed a bunch of elementary schools up in this high capacity category. The interesting one here is Natrona. They have their 300 seats short in the buildings they're using, but they also mothballed 4 buildings, which means they have 921 seats empty in buildings that are closed. So they have a non-construction alternative. So we don't anticipate anything coming forward for them with regard to deal with capacity. So you guys did make a comment that you have steady growth, a trend to continue to grow, which we acknowledge. You talked about capacity issues at the middle and high school. I interpreted that as instructional capacity challenges with regard to the basket of goods and what you're required to teach. Would that be accurate?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
That would be. I mean, we're looking at probably our highest numbers in middle school next year if our numbers hold the same. Just having them in the classroom and making that work. And our challenges.
Well, we acknowledge that. We don't buck that and understand. And obviously, you guys know that we just, even though there's instructional challenges, we've got a process by which we prioritize requests or recommendations to the commission. And I'm sure you're fully well aware of that. That's what my wording here was basically saying. If you do want to add on or build new buildings and stuff in front of state funding, because it's not prioritized as of yet, you have total freedom to do that. We call those enhancements, and all we got to do is record those and move forward, and obviously update our property profiles as you make those changes. Any questions about that?
Nope.
Okay. Part of school, you don't have one, so we're good there. Condition, as a building ages, obviously you're always doing preventive maintenance, routine maintenance. Major maintenance is a very important part of maintaining keeping a building overall an appropriate lifespan. But as those buildings age, they get to a certain point where you need an infusion of capital funding, and that's what capital funding is all about, is helping with those larger expenditures. I did this year put in a facility condition index, the FCI, how that's calculated, just to help newbies understand how that's generated. So these are actual FCI scores out of 450 educational buildings. This is just page 1 of those educational buildings. You don't have a building on that, but you can see that an FCI, a facility condition index score that's higher, basically represents a higher percentage of deferred maintenance related to each of those buildings. So we have them categorized in that. We also have a support or ancillary list. I would probably say on this one, the important thing for school districts to know is that with the limitations of funding coming through the legislature for capital funding, state statute requires the commission to make recommendations to the select committee and to prioritize education buildings above support buildings or before support buildings. So with that in mind, the less funds coming to the school districts with facility remedies in capital funding, at least, you're actually receiving more in major maintenance. But at any rate, major maintenance is probably always important, but particularly important for facilities like support facilities, because we're not anticipating any capital funds for support facilities. Here's your buildings. You have, I would say, excellent condition buildings. You guys have just phenomenal buildings with regard to condition. And so I just said and I would say, I'm going to use the word excellent because it is. Your buildings are in excellent condition.
That is something that we have not had happen.
What's the date?
What's that now?
I was looking at the date.
Which one?
Up on work.
Oh, here?
Didn't happen, but they do.
Here's a 58. They put a lot of money into those buildings all the time.
The scores, those are better than the average.
Yep, looking really nice. Major maintenance, we always have you clean up your statuses or your work orders. Appreciate that. And you always submit plan for major maintenance work orders, and he's the expert on that and approving. And I know that Vern, you and Lance have a very good understanding of definition, what qualifies and what doesn't.
I believe they're going to do a first round of hearings next.
I really appreciate Lance. And a couple weeks ago, I had some of my peers griping about their project managers never approving work orders, and JCN he goes, hey, we have Lance Johnson. He's always done in 24 hours. We never have those kind of issues. So I had to just agree with him.
I really appreciate Lance. When I call him, he gives me information right away. Lance, I really appreciate your help on all that.
Well, thanks, guys. You know, I enjoy working with you.
All right. Well, we also appreciate Lance tremendously. And I don't think he's going to retire for at least 20 more years. So we're looking forward to all those 20 years left.
That's it.
10% enhancement. You guys, you still have a teacherage out, what? The Hoback or whatever. Do you still have a teacherage there? Do you have any other teacherages, Vern?
Yes, we do have one up there in Bondurant, and we have, let's see, we have a duplex down here, a fourplex down here, and a house on the Pinedale area.
Okay.
So there's a number of those.
All right. Well, anyway, you know that those 10% enhancement can be used on those properties as long as it qualifies for major maintenance definition. So that's a great resource for you guys.
We've talked to Lance about that for our other rental property, namely like the aquatic center and stuff. But we kind of shy away from using it for that. We've got some other funds for it. So
okay, good.
So thanks, Lance. We are aware of that. Appreciate you bringing it up.
We just have your last year's worth of major maintenance expenditures. It's illustrated here. You don't have to defend the list. It's just from highest expenditure to lowest expenditure, and then a breakdown per building of those priorities as of last year. Again, illustrative of just your priorities of this last year, just in case someone wants to grab this and look at it. So you guys are it's like the star athlete. You got to challenge them with higher or star academics student. You got to challenge them with higher challenges. You guys, we throw. You only have like a couple twos here, but two represent poor condition, and then three. We just throw in the threes as good condition. You can see down here what that means. You can't really read that. Actually, it's fair. So you guys have excellent condition of buildings and stuff. But what happens is every year in committees, legislative committees, we have usually individual legislators ask, well, are the school districts spending money on their highest needs, lowest scoring condition systems? And so we just put this out and let you speak for yourself, and we don't speak on your behalf. So if a legislator wants to see a particular responses and how a district's prioritizing, you just spoke for yourself, and we pass it on and let you represent yourself. There is another condition assessment. State law requires every 4 years. We hire someone, a third-party consultant, go out, a service provider go out and actually do an assessment. So that's coming up. We're going to be putting together that scope of work this fall, going out and procuring a service provider for that. And then a couple things I want to say here, that training, this is April 1st. We just use that date to backdate to see when we have to start. But probably sometime in April of next year, we're going to have a training of all the districts. We'll walk through the tool that's being used to do condition assessments, how it's scored, its importance, and then its importance of you guys, whoever is most knowledgeable of the buildings, to walk side by side, hand in hand with those assessors when they're on site to make sure that they get the best information possible, because these assessments do mean a lot to districts and are a great tool. So that's an important part. And then the other thing is we have over 550 buildings that need to be done. And it just isn't possible within a reasonable monetary limit to have those all done in the summer in 2.5 months. So we will start the assessments in the spring, a little before school gets out, and carry into the fall a little bit. But that's just a necessity from a financial as well as a realistic point of view. Any questions on the upcoming assessment?
So we're looking at a year reassessing everything. That's good. We're that time. That makes sense. I just can say, Troy, you look at a lot of our 3 scores. A lot of those scores are just 3 just because of the age. Not necessarily as any condition issue or anything like that. It's just that, hey, you know, it's a 20-year-old window or it's a whatever. And that's where those 3s are kind of coming from. The 2s that are on there are a building we're really talking about what we're going to do with long term. So it's kind of one reason we're just sitting on those.
Yeah, well, we understand that and respect that, and thanks for the notes to help clarify that. Component projects, you know that those sometimes districts are struggling with major maintenance to have the major maintenance stretch far enough. They don't necessarily sometimes qualify for major capital projects. So how do you deal with roofs that run, you know, 2.7 million, or water systems or whatever it is? You can see a lot of these, like HVAC over in Douglas High School, it's almost $5.5 million. Well, there's no way they could save enough money over time with major maintenance to get that done. And so component projects is kind of a halfway mark, I guess, or ability to supplement major maintenance, provide some infusion of capital funds to deal with those things that would just trash a district's major maintenance. So this year we had 31 requests, 39 million. On average, there are about 5 or 6 million that the legislature does a year. So if the commission approves this list or approves the prioritization, through number about 4 is potential. After that, it starts getting real murky and questionable. But you guys know that this is available to you. But I also know that you're running your district well and have good buildings and are taking care of them with your available major maintenance. But just to know that you have the availability of this as well. So I just said you're continuing to maintain your buildings with available major maintenance funds at this point.
We're good there. I think long term we might look at a couple of component issues, component funding, but not, at least not this year anyway.
Yeah, I think roofs are a popular one. HVAC is a popular one. Some of those things can run into the hundreds of thousands, if not more. So yeah, and you can, you know this, you can use your major maintenance to basically scope it out, maybe even design it and be ready to move forward. Ask for those component funds, and if approved, you're all ready to move forward with those funds to address that. So you're able to be proactive. All right. So down to the legislative session, we're going to have Brandon kind of leading this. You guys track bills during the legislative sessions. that affect your education, and you track them very well, and you have a system, and all the districts are aware of that, and that's good. I think that's through WASBO or SITE or whoever. And so last year we kind of started doing that as well, just to help you see other things that are out there that may not necessarily be tracked on the education side, but have effect on your particularly business managers and what the latest statutes are and signed bills. So these are ones that have been through the legislative process, and Brandon's going to walk through them. Some of them may have been on the education list, but some of them aren't.
So Vern, I'm going to talk about one that's not on here because you and I are involved in it, but House Bill 8 was a major maintenance multiplier, and you and I a couple of years ago put together that study, and it went to the legislature to increase the major maintenance. I don't know if you tracked that this year, but they ran that same bill. They took out the computerized maintenance system and just did the CRV adjustment. Did you follow that one?
Yeah, I did. I thought that was interesting the way it came out. I'm always glad to see a little more money in that area, though. So it's kind of good to see something came out of that work.
Yeah, they were trying it again, so it showed the intent of the select committee really pushing for that. And House Bill 8, it ended up dying, but you know they're still trying to push that theory through. So I think
there's some real reason to continue looking at that.
Yeah.
Continue to build in some sort of product to do that.
Yeah, maybe this session will try something again and see what happens. House Bill 52 is Public Works and Contracts, and it dealt with keeping money going to local design firms. This one's in particular to FF&E suppliers. So if you're doing any FF&E procurement, your architect of record will want to make sure that he specifies products that are available from Wyoming FF&E vendors. House Bill 65 is a procurement. That essentially takes and brings the dollar values up to present value of today's dollars. Bonding on the school side was at $7,500. That was like, 20-year-old, 30-year-old statute. They brought that up to $50,000. A&E procurement, that's up to $50,000. In 21-3110 on school districts construction, that was at $25,000. They brought that up to $50,000. And then they created advertisements, 2-week minimum across the board. Just trying to create some standardization and get those dollar values up. And hopefully get some locals put to work too with the increasing of the bonding amount. Maybe you got some small major maintenance projects and they can do that work now. House Bill 78. It's a great thing. I was looking at your conditions, of course, because that major maintenance will go to a quarterly payment. And it doesn't take effect this year, but next year it will. And since you have really good conditions, that's going to help you guys. House Bill 79, that's just interfund loans. COLE's bonus is drying up, and this is a mechanism for the legislature to move money. House Bill 152 is underground facilities notifications. Your civil or engineer, if you're going to do any civil work, would need to make sure this is in the plans. It's about using the one call and making sure all utilities are located. They increased the penalties to $5,000 from $500. Senate File 49 is on private schools, making sure that the private schools have the same type of facilities as the public schools. A particular project was related to one in Jackson. Senate File 57, public records. You guys get some of those, I'm sure. There's been some adjustments on that. Senate File 74 is professional service procurement and applying a residency preference based upon dollar value, contract dollar values. Certain benchmarks require a certain amount going to local architectural and engineering firms. And House Bill 1, let's scroll down a little bit. We got a couple of appropriations this year. Satellite High School came through. It's in Sweetwater, $17.9 million. John C. Schiffer is a public school, and they got $8.8 million. There's a ranch school, the Shawnee Modular. They got a reappropriations from existing, so it shows up as zero, but that takes care of an old modular that needed replaced. I got some charter school leases, the Montessori. As you know, Vern, the SFC has unanticipated funds for unforeseen conditions. The security projects, so Lance talked about those a little bit, and you know, we're going to be going to the commission in Maine to talk about, in the statute, it talks to states that the commission has to have a policy in which those funds are administered. And that's going to be in Buffalo in May. We're going to be reviewing that policy with the commission and looking for not only their feedback, but district's feedback, and hopefully open that up to the 20 security elements. So you'll be receiving a portion of that appropriations. And then on the major maintenance, the RS means number went up due to the cost of construction inflation. So that number is added on to our existing appropriations, but you'll see a little bit of an increase in your payment there as well. And the last one, other charter school leaves here in Cheyenne. So total, we got $34.2 million through House Bill 1 in appropriations. Any questions on any of that stuff?
Okay, moving on, biennial budget requests. Something that is different, not different this year, just a continuation, but a solidification thereof. SFC rules and regs does talk about that each building will have 3 different scores that will roll up to a composite. Condition equals 50% of those score for a building, capacity 35%, and educational suitability 15%. We will be working through that process on what that looks like or doesn't look like with the commission, and probably present that and have some discussion in May on that prior to the June meeting, where the budget is a little more solidified and looked at. And then, guys, I'm just assuming this, and you can tell me if it's correct, but based on what your condition, your buildings and your capacity, I said the district has no capital requests for the upcoming budget. Is that correct?
Hey, Troy, let me back you up a little bit. Do you see those weights changing as they look when they look at that again?
Oh, you know, we've had districts. Well, we've had districts comment on that, and for instance, we've had some districts say, "Well, by golly, I mean, why would educational suitability be only 15%?" I mean, obviously, that's the most important thing we do is educate students in facilities. So why wouldn't that be a majority? So that is open for discussion in the future. Obviously, these were, when they updated the rules and regs, they we have to, by state statute, be open to a public process. And no one really fought that, but it certainly, the next time we open this up to be considered, can certainly be discussed. There also may be in the near future, who knows, but there could be legislation that would change this in some way, shape, or form, that would obviously, rules and regs are subjective to, or not subjective, but submissive to and underneath state statute.
Yeah, I appreciate that, because I was thinking in statute one time there was 4 different areas. That's been a while too.
Yeah, well, in reality, it's kind of interesting because it's appropriateness of student environment. That's 1. Conditions 2, capacities 3, and then you have this other, we call it the FCNI, but it's that illumination, air quality, and technology readiness was kind of all combined in another one. Is that what you were thinking, the 4 total?
It was, Troy. And you know, when those weights change, your whole list above gets rejuggled, and some people are happy and some people aren't. That's the other thing that goes with changing those.
Right.
Oh yeah, there's been huge pushback in the past when that happened. So yeah, it's going to be a very interesting year as we move forward through the legislative process on this. Okay, so you guys are talking about maybe some enhancements is how I took this. Is that an accurate interpretation of your comments here? And in some way, I shouldn't say that totally, because when you're talking about remodeling, and here's what I put on the remodeling portion of this, of course, adding square footage does require a district to pay for it as an enhancement unless a capital request is prioritized via the SSC's prioritization process. Perhaps major maintenance funds could help with the, I just put in quotation marks, remodel. The SCDPM, Lance, AKA, is available to help the district understand what can and cannot qualify for major maintenance expenditures. Anything else you want to say on that, district?
Troy, help me make sure I got this right. When it comes to adding square foot, as long as we stay within 150 square feet, we're okay. We go beyond that, then we got the other issues. Yeah,
this actually, that's an interesting question because the commission does have an AG's opinion that talked about, I think they set up to like 100 square feet, if I recall right. Where, is that right, 100? I thought it was, maybe it's a little more than that, 200. But anyway, where if you're adding a vestibule for security, you can go before the commission and ask for an exception of the use of major maintenance. And if granted, you can add square footage based on that exception. But outside of that, I'm unaware of any other exceptions for using major maintenance to add square footage. Lance?
So if we are, and we're looking at middle school storefronts and replacing those and everything, so that's kind of why I wanted to make sure I got that right. I'm not sure we're going to add any square feet anyway, but if I do need to add a little square foot, we can go in and see if I get an exception, but I got to limit how much I can do.
Right, and again, I think they were looking mainly at security and vestibules and making sure students, it had a limited application with regard to allowing that.
Vern, didn't we start down this road once before at the middle school with, you were going to extend that out to underneath that awning area, I believe?
Yes, sir. We were going to end up adding 500-600 square feet.
Right.
We went through some component funding, did some stuff, and never did anything with it. I mean, I had the plans, but today, in Lance, you know how bad those storefronts are. We're looking at literally just replacing those storefronts. We have troubles with those doors staying locked, getting locked and staying locked. And so we just got some issues.
Matter of fact, Greg and I were discussing that yesterday, and we just approved that work order to replace those storefronts yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, I saw that, and I appreciate that, Lance, because I mean, my intention right now is not really to add any square feet. I just want to make sure I really do understand the rules correctly.
And when we get out to the middle school entry here, I want to go back and ask for clarification on the Wrangler gym and the kitchen stuff. I wasn't quite getting that, so if you don't mind when we move off of this topic. Above
the red pickup there, Troy, is the main entryway to that building.
Right,
so
right.
You see the angle, and
right
those are 1970 whatever storefronts, aluminum and glass, and we're having a number of troubles with them. I think part of it's part of our roof issues as well, which we're going to be doing roofing on that area this summer as well. So I don't know what we're going to do with that soffit right now, to be honest, but that's kind of all work order has been done for all that.
Okay.
So what's your question on the Wrangler, Lance?
Troy, would you mind going back down to that latest page you were on that shows the enhancement or narrates the enhancement? Okay, so your district's considering improvements to our space for wrestling. We're using the Wrangler gym cafeteria. So what are your plans there? Where's that going to be?
Well, right now, on what was the serving area, we have 2 mats laid out, and that's where they're practicing. And you can imagine, Lance, it's just enough to lay out 2 mats. I mean, the mats are literally against the walls in there. And, you know, we're looking at the CT space and what we're doing with school lunch space. We've kicked some ideas around and stuff, and this is our second year. We're not going to be using that for the kitchen. We're serving kids, so we were looking whether we want to remodel it and just like make locker room space in there instead of the kitchen. No decisions have been made yet. We're just kicking around some ideas.
Okay. Yeah, this is the first that I actually heard about that one, but the same rules apply as what we discussed back over under the shop building as well. When you start doing renovations, you're restricted with major maintenance money to just repair and replace, and no demolition and adding new. So we'll just have to
what you're saying is, if I want to demo that and turn that kitchen into locker rooms, I couldn't use major maintenance. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Anything else, district, before we close the meeting? Any other issues, ideas, or concerns that have not been discussed within the facility plan up to this point?
None for me.
We don't have any. We got a great relationship with Lance, and does a good job helping us, making sure we understand what we need to do, and appreciate him. And I think it kind of shows with the product we give you too. So.
Okay, staff, anything from you?
Vern, I just want to touch on that Wrangler gym again too, because say you were doing a renovation of that, adding locker rooms or doing whatever, but there are components that you would be able to replace if you were doing that. You couldn't add, you couldn't do the demolition, but if you needed to replace a floor finish or ceiling finish or something like that on something existing, that's a different story there. So there may be some smaller components of that we can talk about that you may be able to utilize as well, to spend major maintenance on, but for the most part, okay, demolition and renovations you can't.
All right. Well, if that's it, then I think I'll go ahead and close out the meeting. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. We look forward to seeing you in person in the future. Maybe we'll stop by and tour your facilities again sometime in the future here. But appreciate you. Congratulations on such a great school district. You guys do a great job, and we look forward to working with you in the future.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for the time today.
You betcha. Bye.